Hi, I'm Josh Bell with the Miami Marlins. I wear NeuroGuard to help with strength and coordination when I'm in the weight room and help with balance when I'm on the baseball field.
One of the most comfortable, reduces concussion, increases performance. You can't get a mouthpiece like that on the market.
Not only is it a great product, it's super easy to use. I recommend it for any player at any age at any level. Thank you guys so much, and go check out NeuroGuard Plus.
NeuroGuard mouthpiece makes it easier to breathe while playing basketball. The unique design is not as bulky as any other mouthpiece and makes you feel safe in concussions.
NeuroGuard really control my breathing while I'm writing. It stops me getting concussions while I write. It's very easy to use, so go pick one up today.
I'm still doing stunts. And the concussions I've got, and I feel much safer with that. I'm doing, like I said, I'm doing a whole lot better in the gym. So NeuroGuard Plus, once this one wears out, you've got a customer for life, because I'm telling you people, NeuroGuard Plus is the way to go, and me, Mark Ash, says so.
Parents, kids, coaches, NeuroGuard. It's the future. Stay tuned.
Brown right, motion, tailback slant. Let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner, all right? On one, ready? Go, 13! Coming up, go, 13!
Well, I'd seen it when I was small, and I'd sitting in my mind. If I grew up and things got tough, I'd rob that small town.
We're here to talk about it. Hello, everybody. Terry Grant Goodwin here. Sideline to Sideline, the Two-Way Edition, brought to you by NeuroGuard Plus, right here on L4 Media. And Grant, we hit 2 games in. Teams are starting to round into form, and for the 2A world, man, I thought week 1 was pretty darn good, but week 2 turned out to be even maybe better.
Yeah. In week 3, man, there's some huge games. Pre-district schedule here. There's 4 or 5 really, really good games that are really going to be a measuring stick for some of the teams that think they might have it all, everything that it takes to make it to Arlington. Some of these games this week will kind of tell you whether or not they, what they believe is true.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We will get into the week 3 games, but before we do that, let's review last week's game. And I want to start with a damp, as Timpson back-to-back weeks have had games that they've been challenged, but especially Lovelady. And, we talked about this last week. We said, I don't know if a lot of people were looking at this game, but we thought the Lions were going to test the Bears, and boy, did they. The game had 10 lead changes. The crazier thing is, though, it was 50-48, but for the first 16 minutes of the game, it was scoreless.
Yeah, that's what, I was doing research for our run sheet on Saturday. I saw that, and I had to double check. Yeah, scoreless for the first 16 minutes in a 50-48 ball game. That's crazy. So, yeah, a lot of offensive output late after the first quarter. Man, Benson had 315 yards running during the night.
Their defense is obviously something they need to fix. But again, Lovelady's offense is really good.
Yeah, and I mean, Timpson has front loaded their schedule, right? Really tough teams first 2 weeks. Got to another tough one this week against Westwood, Austin Westwood. So, Timpson will play anybody anywhere. That's
Well,
obvious, right?
yeah,
And they're going to give up points because the teams they're playing are pretty high octane offenses.
Well, let's talk about team giving up points and a team that last year didn't for a lot of their schedule. But again, we kind of know them for who they played in the non-district. Honeygrove has flipped that around this year, and they outlast Marlin 21-20. Now Honeygrove was up 21-7. Their star running back Morris got hurt. He's going to be fine, but they kind of held him out that second half. It's still not district. You still want to be safe, and that allowed Marlin to get back into the game. And I'm not saying they wouldn't get into the game either way, but it did. Honeygrove was pretty much in control of that. I like that they're giving up points defensively because they're playing better teams, and that's going to help them.
Hey, let's not forget though, Honeygrove, their defense only allowed Marlin 69 yards on the ground.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this defense is still good.
Yeah.
And they're going to give up some points this week against 3A Winsboro. But again, it's for the best. And now, honestly, when you look at where 9-2A Division I is, and you look at Cooper now 0-2 and just getting absolutely dominated by Collinsville last week, that, we both thought Collinsville would win comfortably, but not 38-2. And so you're now looking at, Honeygrove's toughest tests are going to all be in non-district before they get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're still Pewitt, though. They're still Pewitt. I think Pewitt's going to.
Pewitt had a little bit of a hiccup against White Oak. That's a head scratcher.
Well, it is a 3A school.
Right.
And White Oak won in week 1. It felt like, maybe that was one of those that once White Oak finally got a win, everything kind of starts to roll downhill a little bit for them. But yeah, it is a little bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Windthorst outlasted Wichita Falls City View in a classic 21-20 in overtime. Brock Belcher, he threw for 250 yards on 20 completions. That's moving the ball down the field.
Yeah,
That's not
is.
dinking and dunking.
That's pushing it.
And
right.
we Munster, we'll talk a little bit about them here in a minute. They're playing Windthorst this week in their annual. That's one of the friendliest rivalries. Like, they're rivals, but they're really friendly. But with how many points Munster gave up to Holiday and how many points Munster scored against Holiday, that game, which normally is kind of a defensive game, all of a sudden that Windthorst Munster game this week feels like it might be kind of a high scoring shootout.
It could be, but let me say this: as good as City View has been offensively the last couple of years, Holiday right now is offensive juggernaut up in 3A.
That's
right?
true.
So, you kind of see where some of that Munster defense didn't necessarily play bad. They just played against a higher octane offense than I think what City View had. But we'll dissect that game here in the next one.
Ganado had another tough one as they outlast Bowling 21-7. Landon Ariga threw for 213 yards. And I mean, this is just how the Indians want to win games. They want to get out in front
and play really good defense.
They'll throw early and run late to outlast you. And again, two really tough games, but two good games for the Indians, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, where do you want to go next?
Let's go Poth 51, Falls 13. This is a game I watched online on Saturday. Went back and watched it. And Poth, offensively, I mean, their defense played great. Offensively, man, those receivers they have, that quarterback, running back, I mean, they are just offensively, Poth is going to be really tough to deal with. And especially when their defense gets rolling. I mean, Falls City's a really darn good football team, and just at Poth, just especially in this second half, it really started rolling.
And some of
their
that's
offensive
depth.
line is really good size.
Yep.
I mean, Poth is very, very impressive, and I'm starting to think we need to make a trip down to Poth here in the next few weeks to go see the Pirates play.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for Falls City, this is what they do. They play tough teams in the non-district.
Yeah.
They usually, they'll win a couple, but usually they get beat. Last year, Poth beat them 33-0. But, it gets them ready for the season. And that's why over the last few years, they're 10-4, 8-5. They might go into district play with 2 or 3, 4 losses, but they don't lose much after that. And they've got Stockdale this week again playing up.
I'm going to tell you, though, going back and watching this Poth game, Poth to me looks like that special team, the team that went up and played Gunner.
Mm-hmm.
This team could be better, if not, I mean, as good, if not better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this Poth team they're impressive. They get hidden in the media down there, right?
Yeah, even with the success that they've had over the last 10 years.
And you try to find stats or write-ups.
It's hard.
Yeah, and maybe San Antonio will have every once in a while, but not often. So they, the Pirates get overlooked. We're not going to overlook them this year.
And we're
we're
going
to make it down to Poth this year to see them in person, because I was very impressed with Poth, that Poth Falls City game.
And we'll be talking about them again here on the 2A show in the preview, because they have a really good game coming up. Holiday 49, Munster 35, almost 900 yards of total offense.
Boy, that is crazy. In a 2A game, that is crazy, right?
Yeah.
I can remember back in the day, you look in the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, heck, the 70s, you didn't see hardly any teams scoring that many points, but especially the lower classifications.
Yeah.
The ball, you couldn't throw the ball like that, right? I mean, you just, a small school throwing the ball like Holiday is now was unheard of.
Well, that's like when Rogers was
slinging it around yard now.
Yeah, when Rogers did that back when they went to the state finals and lost, it was so shocking to see. It's sad to think that.
But
like
Rogers was an anomaly.
Yeah,
at that point.
But yeah, as far as for Munster, focusing on the 2A side of this, again, this is just a game you chalk up to. They're getting better. They're going to take their lumps.
Dude, Munster holding that close to Holiday, that says a lot about Munster. That you learn a lot about yourself in a loss sometimes, and I think Munster learned a lot about themselves, and it tells me a lot about Munster. Munster is a state finalist threat.
Yeah, totally. And we even said that last week. We talked about, this game wasn't going to decide it. We've already felt that they were going to be, but hanging around in this game. And
it kind of solidified it for
me.
It
being back and forth for 90% of the game, I'm very impressed in a loss. And sometimes you do it. And I'll say this, and it feels like we're focusing on 3A teams. But again, this is what happens in non-district 3A versus 2A. Shiner gets shut out by Rice Consolidated. And we'll talk about
Shiner's
the
Rice. Now 0-2.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Rice Consolidated side on the 3A show. But for Shiner, a little bit concerning. Not that you lost to Rice Consolidated. Rice Consolidated, seems to be very improved from where they've been the last few years. But in 2 games against 2, really good 3A teams, Hallettsville and Rice Consolidated, you're averaging 8 points. That's a little shocking for Shiner, and it doesn't get any easier.
No,
they've
Shiner's
got
a distinct possibility of starting this season 0-3 as they take on Poth.
0-4 because they play Vanderbilt Industrial in 2 weeks. I right now, unless
Poth
Shiner,
might be the tougher game, dude.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
And and then you look at the fact that 2 games in the district, they'll play Falls City. And that's going to be a game, dude. That's going to be a game between 2 teams that'll both be a combined maybe 2-7, and yet it'll be but it'll be the biggest. It'll be the best game of the district. Those are your 2 top teams.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Shiner falls to 0-2.
How about 2-0 Grapeland beating Bremond 44-32? Bremond comes in pretty highly rated, and Grapeland just takes it from 44-32.
Yeah, the Sandys 2-0. They they started the year off beating Cayuga. It was 36-14. It was an okay win. Cayuga's not anything special this year, but beating Bremond, and this is a Grapeland team that it's been a few years since we were talking about them in any world. I mean, they were 9-3 in 2019, and since then. Oh, we had somebody messaging us here live, even though I tell intern Noe the Pro that, hey, we're recording. Don't message me. He has to do it anyway. But this year's Sandys, they have 17 returning starters. Jordan Wood, the head coach there, has a really good running back in Malik Johnson. And I'm telling you, they're in that district with Lovelady. They're in that district with Alto. And, Alto's back. So we're going to have to see their 2-0. Yeah. And I think 11-2A Division II, that's going to be.
Is fully eligible now.
Yeah,
right?
It's fully eligible. They were honest with their numbers for once. And then you've got Overton, who bounced back last week after a little bit of a shocking loss to Alba Golden, 17-12. They throttled Price Carlisle. Man, Price Carlisle fell quick. We all kind of felt that they might take a step back when their coach went to Henderson, but Price Carlisle went through coaching changes before and have been perfectly fine, and now they're 0-2. So
sometimes in these smaller schools, the well runs dry or not as wet. Right?
As wet. Speaking of, has the well run dry in Albany? Now I know they're playing tough teams, but Holly shuts them out 21-0. More impressive to me is that Keegan Abels throws for 300 yards on Albany's, it's their defense, man. As great as Chip Chambers was, and as great as what's his name was last year, the running back, they always lived off what that defense did. And Albany has struggled to start the year.
Yeah, Holly defense limited Albany to basically 100 yards rushing, 126 yards passing.
Yeah,
So-
and this is a team that, they were replacing a lot on defense, and they were replacing half their offense, but you still had Chip Chambers.
Yeah.
And yes, I know how great Adam Hill was, and Case and Fairchild, who kind of got lost in all that last year.
Those two were beasts, and that made a huge difference.
But I mean, this is a program that over the last 15 years, man, they don't rebuild, they reload, and all of a sudden, now again, you got to look at who they lost to. Stanford, they lost to Holly, but to get beat by a combined 71-6, I still think it's a little bit concerning for them.
Yeah.
They'll take on Seymour this week. Garrison,
Yeah.
man, they are playing the, hey, let's just barely win game as they beat Wascom. Was it by 1 point last week or in week 1? Yeah, it was
1 point.
So it was 21-20 against Wascom, and then they beat ARP 27-26.
Yeah, I guess Garrison knows how to play tough games, right?
Well, and all jokes aside, we were kind of having fun with it. Wascom seems to be way more improved. They won last week. ARP, ARP's ARP. ARP is one of those teams. They're not quite at the level of maddeningly inconsistent like a Dangerfield, but man, whenever you think they're going to zig, ARP always zag. I think this was a pretty good loss for them, because I still think, I know Garrison is younger than they were last year. They took a step back, but I still think Garrison at the end of the day, in fact, I still kind of contend by the time the brackets play out, Garrison coming on the bottom side of that region might be the best team coming out of it.
They could.
Them or Timpson, of course, again, and there's other teams. I'm not trying, way too early, but just
Garrison could. Going back to ARP, I think ARP to me is the Texas high school equivalent of the Minnesota Vikings, where you get a bunch of dudes and you're going to have a really good year.
Yep.
And then you don't quite get to where you think you're going to get, right? ARP has had some teams.
Oh,
man.
yeah. Dale Irwin, he was there forever.
Right,
I mean, look at, hey,
Like, you don't want to play them.
Yes.
Right? But they just don't go quite as far as where
Wisconsin in college is another good comparison.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, there's a guy that just had his debut for the Dallas Cowboys that's from ARP that absolutely
overshown. Oh,
I mean,
boy.
you want to talk about, everybody was talking about
Everybody's saying Micah who?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody was, the whole thing was all Micah needs in that linebacker core is a sidekick.
Right.
I think we found his sidekick. That sack that he had on Deshaun Watson, where he closed the closing speed
past Parsons.
Yes,
he flew past.
He flew past Parsons.
Was changing directions,
but still,
yeah.
And,
no, I agree.
And I know he played a little bit last year in preseason, but he's basically a rookie. For him to have that confidence he's in no man's land. You drop back, you go forward on fourth down, and he's like, nope, I'm going right there. I love that.
Think about this, and I don't want to get too NFL intensive.
But we're talking about a 2A guy,
sideline to sideline. But think about this: when the Cowboys have needed a spy, right, on a quarterback, you would have to take Micah away from what he wants to do.
100%.
Now, Micah, you go where you want. Overshown, you're now our spy, right? I know it's just one game, but you don't lose speed.
Oh, no, exactly. He wasn't doing anything fluky. That was pure
healthy, and
that's going to be the big one. Yeah. Abernathy, we thought when they dropped down into 2A, being pretty competitive a couple of years ago, making it to the region finals, having teams that were always competitive. We thought they were going to drop down and continue that. They returned 9 guys on defense from last year. They returned 6 they were a playoff team in 3A. And the first 2 weeks, and this is against 2 2A teams now, 2 good ones. They lose to Stratford 46-20, and they lose to Sunray 39-30. The concerning thing for me is, as an Antelope fan, the defense was supposed to be the anchor, and so far the defense has been terrible.
Well, terrible, but I think Abernathy's going to be fine. I mean, they put 2 really good offenses, man.
Yeah, but they're 2A offenses. This is their level now. They're supposed to be competitive.
But I'm just saying, how many more offenses are they going to see like they've seen?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
In the region, right? I think they'll be okay in the region. I think this speaks more highly of Sunray. Man.
Oh yeah, Sunray. I
mean, putting 39, basically 40 points on an Abernathy defense that I still think is going to be pretty good. it's hard to tell who they played in just 2 games.
I mean,
Let's go see them against the average teams,
Yeah.
right?
But
That's how you judge some of these is by the average teams.
that's a good
right?
point. That's a good point.
You
And
know, not the the 09 Patriots of 2A Division 1 in Region 1, right? I mean, Sunray's just Sunray offensively is
special.
I don't know, does it get any better?
I mean,
out
we've
in
talked
Region
about
1?
it
I mean,
every week so far. Armande Luan, and we feel like he might be the best quarterback in 2A. And
this might be Sunray's year.
Yeah. Well, again,
I mean,
their
you might
defense.
want to start making reservations. I know it's week 2, but you might want to start making reservations. Give them a couple of more weeks, and then get on Expedia and make your reservations.
Actually, if you
to
do that,
Austin.
hang on. If you do that, since you're going to do that,
I say Austin? I'm sorry, Arlington.
I mean, if they want to go to Austin, they
can.
they can. But if you want to go ahead and go to SeatGeek and use our promo code sideline to sideline, you get $20 off your first purchase there. So check that out. All right, so that's the review of last week.
How about Panhandle 33?
Oh yeah,
Stratford 27 in overtime.
Well, that's
Panhandle,
perfect.
Wow.
Yes,
2-0 Panhandle, 19 returning starters.
We talked about that, during the preview show. They kind of get lost where they're at. I mean, the last couple of years, man, it's been 10-3, 9-4, 10-3, and they get lost up there. And yet here they are. They get the big win against Stratford. We had talked about Stratford the week before,
and Albany the week before that.
Yeah, and so just very impressed with where Panhandle is. And the Panthers, we're going to be talking about them a little bit more. Let's go ahead and transition into this week's games with Stratford, as they're going to be on the road against Sunray. I know, and I'm not looking at the Panhandle loss. I know a lot of people, I think, have Stratford as a 7 to 14 point favorite. I'm all in on the Sunray
train right now,
dude. Armando
man.
Luan is at that. He's at that point to me where until you beat him, I'm going to pick him almost every time.
Yeah. Can the Stratford defense defend Lujan at quarterback with one of the best receivers, the biggest weapons in that region, in Dawson Bennett?
Well, Dawson Bennett, Kagan Davis, Ty McDowell.
Right.
They have a very
right
good.
now is just on
he's on
level.
Yeah,
him,
he is.
Him and Lujan, they seem unstoppable.
Yep.
I don't know what you're going to do. And when Sunray decides we can run the ball, they can run the ball.
Arnold Mendoza, man,
Yeah,
he will get you in a time. And so far, Stratford being 1-1, they gave up 27 and they gave up 20 to me. And I like Panhandle, but to me, lesser offenses. I like Sunray in this game. I think it's back and forth. I think it's back and forth. I think it's very close.
Yeah, this is, all things equal, no turnovers, or not a lot of turnovers, at least by one team, or penalties, right? I think Sunray wins this ball game, but I think this is a measuring stick for both of these programs.
I agree.
For this
I totally
year,
agree.
Right? Whoever wins this ball game between Sunray and Stratford, I really think that will set the tone for the rest of their season. If it's Sunray that goes 3-0 against that schedule, man, watch out. If Stratford can go 2-1 against the schedule they've had, watch out. But I like Sunray in this one, in a close one.
I don't know why, but it just feels like, and it might not be, it just might be us because it's our second full year doing 2A. It just feels like the two divisions, they battle it out, the top teams in each division. Yeah. And a lot of it's because a lot of the teams are in the same area. So it makes sense. Hey, this is a great non-district game. We can play and move on. So where do you want to go next?
Now let's go Westwood. Palestine Westwood versus Timpson. I think this is a great game that maybe not a lot of people are talking about. Westwood 2-0. They've beaten Mahia 77-42. They beat St. Augustine 56-0. This Westwood team is an offensive juggernaut. We already know what Timpson can do with J.J. Garner at quarterback, Braylon Parker at receiver, Londell Parker at defensive line, who had a huge game last week. This Westwood offense with John Denman, running back, Kavian Bryant.
Bryant's amazing.
Yeah, at quarterback, Kason Dial at receiver, who I think Dial had to come in at quarterback for Bryant last week for a few snaps at least. I don't know if Bryant's hurt or what, but he did a commendable job there and kept the offense moving, tune at 56-0 against St. Augustine. a St. Augustine defense that's not that bad.
I mean, not 56-0, folks. I know, especially if you're in East Texas, you might be laughing. Westwood, this isn't Westwood of old.
No, it's not your grandmother's.
Yeah,
Westwood.
last year they were 9-3. Kavian Bryan, if he stays healthy, he might be the most highest recruited Westwood Panthers since Adrian Peterson before he magically went to Palestine and ended up as a Wildcat.
Did you read the story on?
Yeah, he hasn't. In fact, that's what intern Noe the Pro was sending me. Yeah,
nothing.
Well, poor guy, like better spending, I mean,
well, I know.
I mean, not that if you gave me $12 million, I wouldn't blow through it like it was.
We could have him. We give him a free place to stay in the studio or something.
I bet we could get him to do promos for us if we just fed him. So who do you have winning this game?
We just fed him. It's like Taco Casa
every day.
Chilada. Now I need you to say sideline.
Say sideline to sideline rules.
So Timpson winning this game, but honestly,
I'm going to go Westwood.
I don't disagree. I think it's a toss up. I think I'm going with the proven name right now.
Yeah, I have no problem with
Garner. And if JJ Garner is healthy, him at quarterback, he's electric.
And this is not a knock on Lovelady, but if you're giving up 48 to Lovelady, I just think Palestine, Westwood, the 3A Division I depth, and they actually have depth this year. I just think I think it's going to be a little too much for Timpson. I do feel it'll be a lot like that game. I don't think Westwood's going to stop them. That's going to be Westwood's Achilles heel once they get into 3A.
Maybe we should be there instead of in Austin. This is in Timpson, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that chili
parlor.
Gotta
go and see Wimberley and
LBJ in the chili parlor.
Oh yeah.
LBJ.
No. Texas chili parlor. If you haven't been there, by the way, you are missing out. Old school chili parlor.
I think Studio Wise going to make me take a bucket down to bring her back. That's her chili is her favorite food, and that is her favorite place. When she lived down there, she worked in bars and restaurants, and so that was where they always ended up at the end of the night. And she just, she was so excited a couple years ago when you and I went, and man, that was amazing.
Well, I'll bring a bucket too.
All right, let's go Windthorst Munster. This is, again, as we talked about, a big rivalry. Of course, if you don't know, we have the Munster football show you can hear each and every week on our.
Hey, are they doing the Munster or the German Fest in Munster?
No, so that's a big.
The Chamber of Commerce has it on their website.
Yeah, but they're not. So them and the JCs have been fighting. Over beer sales, and so the chamber announced that that's why we don't actually advertise them this year, because they're not doing it. We've been advertising that for 4 years now. So when I asked them, hey, how do y'all still want to advertise? And they're like, no. And so I just kind of asked what's going on, and apparently they're not hosting it, and then the JCs aren't hosting it. So apparently there's none.
Chamber of Commerce still has it up on their website.
Yeah,
they already made plans. So.
I don't. People websites
show up Munster that we can just hope for the best, because they had that whole 18-wheeler. Right,
you had a lot of fun last year with
it. They had an 18-wheeler with taps coming out of the side, and you could get spot in Oktoberfest and a big beer stein, 32-ounce beer stein for you bought the stein for $10.
Yeah,
and they filled it for $5.
Yeah,
and I went $5. My bank account the next day was $5. $5.
The only thing they have on their website about it now is the run. Like if you go to click on the actual Oktoberfest
run,
they have the dates, but they don't. They have the run, they have the dates, but they don't have anything else. Okay. But we'll have to see. I hope they do. I hope they come to. Maybe they can. And if y'all know, email us
next month, so they better do it quick.
Yeah, email
For my
us.
sake, please do it.
Yes, they've been doing it forever.
If I have my sideline check come in, I can go and spend money on the spot in Oktoberfest, unlimited Oktoberfest, and a bunch of junk from the vendors that I don't need, that after about 6 of those big 32-ounce, I just buy everything.
Yeah, so it's being done, but it's not being run by the chamber. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. Well,
so it's its own entity now, which, hey, if that's, as long as they keep it going, because that's.
If you're that entity and you want to advertise.
Yeah, hey, reach out to us on our Munster show. But anyway, let's talk this game. Again, this is a game between two teams.
Munster wins this one going away.
Oh, I think they win.
Okay, not going away. Munster wins this by 14 or more.
Yeah, I agree with that exactly, because the last couple of years, the last couple of years, Munster's schedule was they were 0-2 going into this game, and both years they pretty much handled Windthorst. And Windthorst is better this year, but I think Munster is better this year too. And the scary thing about
I think
Munster,
Munster's a lot better.
well, yeah, scary thing about Munster is it's 90% juniors. I mean,
Right,
they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere even after this year. But I think
There's a lot of sophomores on there too.
yeah,
right?
yeah. But the quarterback and that core it's juniors. But I like Windthorst. I think Windthorst can give them problems. But you said it best. If you're scoring 35 against Holiday, and Holiday, their defense hasn't gone anywhere. That's still a really good defense.
Right.
If you're scoring 35 against Holiday, I just don't think Windthorst is going to be able to contain them.
Yeah. All right. We did Shiner and Poth. Have we done? Shiner
Well,
and
we
Poth
just
yet?
talked about them both in the last one, so let's go ahead and talk Shiner and Poth.
I think Poth wins this game, and I think
Pretty ugly.
it could be. Look, Shiner 0-2. They lost to Hallettsville and Rice Consolidated.
Yeah.
I understand the Hallettsville loss. And while Rice Consolidated is now 2-0, do I think they're really back? Not quite yet.
Not beating a good Shiner team 23-0 back. Yeah, like if they'd have beat them, if Rice Consolidated beat Shiner 16-14 or something like that, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's cool. But to get shut out by Rice Consolidated, yeah, that's
well.
I think Shiner might be in legitimate trouble this year.
Well, they're in legitimate trouble this week because that Poth defense is good as Falls City's offense is, and they got speed. That quarterback can go for Falls City, and Poth pretty much. I mean, that guy had some yards against Poth in the first half. Second half, they kind of just did what they wanted defensively. Poth did, and I don't know that Shiner's going to be able to move the ball against Poth, and I don't think they can even come close to stopping this Poth offense.
I genuinely
Poth is legitimately really darn good.
To me, they are the second best team in 3A Division II under Gunter, but that gap might not be as far as it was 2 years ago.
Closed a lot since Gunter and Poth played before.
Yep, and
I'm not saying Poth would beat Gunter in the state final, but you might see that rematch.
I think there's a really good chance you do. I really like what Poth is doing, and again, beating Comanche and Falls City, two good teams.
Now we probably just jinxed you.
Yeah,
losing
sorry.
The first round of the playoffs, and sorry.
Hey, we do that sometimes. Where you want to go next?
Collinsville and Callisburg is one you wanted.
I wanted to bring this up because we talked a little bit about it last week. What would Collinsville do? This year. We talk about Armando Luan this year being the best 2A quarterback. Logan Jenkins, record-breaking 2A quarterback. They also lost Reed Patterson and Rylan Newman. They literally lost their whole wide receiver core. And they're in Munster's district. And so when I was talking to the head coach of the Hornets, Brady Carney, and we're just, who do you have in this district? He's like, I still think Collinsville. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, they've just flipped it. They're just a run team now. I mean, they still out of the spread. They still run the same concepts, but they're running the ball, and they'll happily run the ball. And in the first two games, they've scored 38 and 40. And I know Cooper is down, but 38 points against that Cooper defense when you're not throwing the ball, because that was and they're still throwing the ball, but that was how they scored on Cooper the last couple of years, was their passing game. And for them to do it with their running game, I just think it was impressive.
When does Collinsville and Munster play?
Second to the last week of the season, November 1st.
Okay. We will probably have to be there. Where is it at? Collinsville or in Munster?
At Collinsville.
All right. I have to be there.
That I would have no problem going to that game. I think that's going to be an absolute barn burner. I still think I like Munster, but yeah. And then Coleman, Collinsville, they're going to destroy Callisburg this week. They're going to destroy Wolf City next week. And then they've got Coleman, and Coleman's still Coleman. I know they lost in week 1, but Coleman, the Blue Cats are still the Blue Cats. So I think that'll be a good test.
All right. Last one we got, I don't think we brought up, is a huge one. East Bernard and Ganado.
Yes.
But outside of Sunray Stratford, East Bernard and Ganado might be the biggest game of the week in the class, right?
I mean, it feels like East Bernard, they've transitioned, 2 years they were 3-7. They had the slot T, of course, for 400 years. They bring in Jeremy Jenkins. They kind of retool. Last year, they started out slow. They ended strong. And lo and behold, here they are, 2-0,
And one of
beating
those
Goliad.
wins,
Yeah,
the first year they beat Goliad,
And they-
34-21. Goliad's still a really darn good
oh,
football
who did
team.
Goliad beat last
And then they
week?
beat the Woodlands Christian 38-34.
Goliad
last
beat
week.
Tidehaven last week. So that tells you how good Goliad is.
Yeah.
And so for East Bernard and held Tidehaven, I know Tidehaven doesn't have Joseph Dodd, but they still have a lot back on offense. Tidehaven Poe's still going to have a rough road to get through Tidehaven. But they held Tidehaven to 14. East Bernard scored 34 on them. So I
now, how do they stack up against Ganado? This offense with Landon Arriga, we had mentioned him in the previous segment at quarterback, and then they got at running back Vance Salabatura and Austin Pena at receiver. Really stout defense. Defensive line's really good. The offensive line's really good. This is a huge test for both teams. This is a measuring stick. Just like Sunray Stratford, this is a measuring stick.
Yeah, and it's funny when you say that, because you always think, oh, if it's a measuring stick, it's the smaller school. But I think this is just as much of a measuring stick game for East Bernard, even though they're 3A Division II. I think the Brahmas win. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. I think it's going to be lower scoring, but I still think that they have enough depth and they have enough offense. Seth Morton at quarterback.
I kind of tend to agree with you, but I'm going with the Indians in this one.
I have no
think
problem
this
with
is
that.
where Ganado steps up. They're 1-1, right? They dropped one earlier in the first week of the season.
Yeah.
I think Ganado is one of the prohibitive favorites in the class to win state. I think this is when Ganado steps up and says, hey, look, we're Ganado. We were in the finals last year. Let's start being the Indians. And I think Ganado comes out and wins a nail biter against the Brahmas.
Dude, Ganado has East Bernard this week and Tidehaven next week.
And I guess Ganado's not going to dodge anybody.
Oh, no. I mean, they beat Van Vleck and they beat Bowling, and Bowling's a really solid team. And I mean, that's what you have to do if you're 2A Division I with all the other teams in 2A Division I. You've got to play up in non-district. All right. Is that it?
Yep.
Want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, you can email us, Grant and Terry at s2ssport.com. You can see, if you're watching on the video, our audio-only website, s2sgrantandterry.com, or you can find us on YouTube at L4 Media Company. Hey, man, we're getting closer to district play. 30% of the season, or technically a little bit over 30% of the season, will be done after this week. District play starts for some in 2 weeks. We do want to remind you, in a couple weeks, we're going to have a bye. You're not going to be here, so we're going to have a show, but it's probably going to be one show, and it's going to be a bunch of different people on. We're just going to kind of talk to different people in 2A, 3A, and 4A. We'll be giving you information on that. Until next time, he's Grant Goodwin. I'm Terry Bennett. This is Sideline to Sideline, the 2A edition, brought to you by NeuroGuard Plus on L4 Media.
Yeah, I'd be sacking a small town.